Was the initial plan to pull the car around back, and then they had to abort mission, and the driver came up on the circle driveway instead, and then they went out the front door? Part of the plan was to remove Nancy via the front door.
No individual is named as a suspect in this video. She built her career on her hands and knees, not as a figure of speech, literally crouched over crime scenes with brushes, cameras, and raking light rigs pulling evidence out of surfaces that looked like bare ground to everyone else. Maureen O'Connell served as a special agent on the FBI's evidence response team, one of the most elite forensic units in federal law enforcement. She was not a profiler, not a detective. She was the person who came in after the tape went up and processed what others couldn't see. She was specifically trained to find what trained investigators miss. And so when the drone footage from Nancy Guthrie's property was released, footage that had this entire community freezing frames and arguing in comment sections, O'Connell did what 2 decades of training conditioned her to do. She looked at the driveway, not the back gate, not the flower pots, not the front door or the window frames, the driveway. And what she found there, or more precisely, what she did not find, is a question she has been sitting with since day one. On day 67 of the Nancy Guthrie investigation, journalist Brian Anton sat down with O'Connell for an on-the-record interview. What she said in that conversation has been underreported by virtually every major outlet covering this case. That ends here. Who is Maureen O'Connell? Before we go any further, if this level of forensic detail matters to you, and clearly it does or you wouldn't still be here, hit subscribe right now. This channel publishes new investigations regularly, and the next one is one you will not want to miss. Now, back to O'Connell. The FBI's evidence response team is not a general forensic unit. ERT agents are called in for the most complex, the most sensitive, the highest stakes crime scenes in the country. Presidential security events, mass casualty incidents, federal prosecutions, where a single procedural error at the scene doesn't just embarrass the investigation, it ends it. ERT training covers blood pattern analysis, digital evidence, latent print recovery, trace collection, and tire impression analysis, which is not a side discipline within that world. It is a core competency. O'Connell was not giving an informal hot take to a friendly audience. She was a named practitioner making a specific professional assessment to a credentialed journalist about a real missing persons case. That distinction carries weight. The circle driveway, Nancy Guthrie's Tucson property, has what's commonly called a circle driveway, a looping approach at the front of the home that lets a vehicle pull in, arc around, and exit forward without reversing. Practically speaking, it's just a convenience feature. Thousands of Southwest properties have them. But think about it differently for a moment. A circle driveway is also, from a purely operational standpoint, a clean exit. You pull in. You do what you need to do. You leave forward-facing, at speed, with full visibility, no reversing down a residential street, no three-point turn while exposed. I mean, if someone needed to remove Nancy Guthrie from that property quickly and quietly, the circle driveway is exactly where you stage the vehicle. O'Connell told Anton directly, the circle driveway is where she believes the vehicle that transported Nancy was positioned. Circle driveway is where I think the car pulled up to get her. I know the back doors were gated, but I think something happened that caused them to go out the front. Maybe it was that dog barking in the back. This is not a casual observation from someone who watched footage once. This is a career forensic investigator reconstructing human behavior from physical evidence, working backward from what a scene shows to what actions produced it. The dog. The disrupted plan. The property adjacent to or near Nancy's home has a dog. And according to O'Connell's analysis, that dog may have directly shaped how this abduction unfolded. Dogs bark at unfamiliar vehicles. They bark at sounds and smells that are outside the normal rhythm of a neighborhood. In a quiet Tucson residential street, a dog reacting persistently to a vehicle idling in a rear alley is exactly the kind of thing that pulls back a curtain, that switches on a porch light, that sends someone outside to look. O'Connell's reading, something at the rear of the property, possibly the dog, possibly another complication, forced a change of plan. The rear exit was abandoned. The vehicle moved to the front. Nancy left through the circle driveway. Staged misdirection at the back, or a disrupted original plan at the back. Either way, the circle driveway becomes the real operational point. But two theories that appeared to point in opposite directions are actually describing the same conclusion from different angles. Here is where the analysis becomes technically critical, and where the broader media coverage has almost entirely failed this case. Nancy Guthrie's driveway is not concrete. It is not asphalt. It is decomposed granite, the loose granular material formed when granite weathers down over time. Across Arizona, it is everywhere. It handles the desert heat, drains rainfall, requires almost no maintenance, and looks native to the landscape. Forensically, it is a nightmare.
Our driveway is made of decomposed granite, which is very, very difficult to develop a tire.
Decomposed granite is not fixed. It shifts. A vehicle's weight does compress it, creating a pattern corresponding to tire contact. But that compression is fragile in a way that a mud impression is not. Foot traffic disturbs it. A second vehicle erases it. Wind moves it. Desert temperature cycling destabilizes it. The window for recovering a usable impression before the surface resets is narrow. There is also a visibility problem. DG's naturally irregular texture means a tire impression doesn't stand out the way it would in smooth soil. The compaction is there, but under normal daylight conditions, it can be nearly invisible, which brings us to oblique lighting.
A really good photographer, you can, and a great scales, sets of scales, and you move your light source from all different kinds of oblique lightings, because the oblique lighting will pick up the ridge detail on the impression.
Tire impressions in granular surfaces require a specific photographic technique. A light source positioned almost parallel to the ground, raking across the surface so that the shadows cast by any depressions or raised areas create contrast the camera can actually capture. Without it, what you know is there cannot be photographed in a way that is forensically defensible in court. You also need a calibrated scale bar in frame at surface level. Without that, the image cannot be measured or compared.
Ruler is a scale. That's what I'm talking about when I say a scale. You know, those little rulers next to a fingerprint or something like that. Well, we have the long ones for the tire impressions.
O'Connell described exactly this when she spoke to Anton. And then she described what she did not see in the drone footage. She watched the footage the way she was trained. Not looking for drama, looking for process, looking for whether the forensic work that this scene warranted was visibly being conducted. She did not see oblique lighting equipment in the circle driveway. No technicians at ground level with scales and cameras. No systematic grid documentation of the front surface. No activity centered on that decomposed granite that corresponded to impression recovery work. Critically, she said what any intellectually honest practitioner should say. The FBI may have conducted that work outside the window captured by the drone. She cannot know from publicly available footage whether it happened at 4 a.m., before media arrived, during a period the drone wasn't overhead. She was precise about the limits of what she could conclude. But she didn't see it. And that absence is what has stayed with her. The FBI maintains comprehensive tire tread databases built over decades, a library of tread patterns from commercially available passenger, truck, and commercial vehicle tires that forensic examiners use to compare recovered impressions against known types.
The Bureau has a database filled with every tire impression you can imagine, and we can look at those photographs and they can make a cursory determination as to whether or not those tire tracks fit that tire.
A clear, correctly photographed, the properly scaled impression from that circle driveway could have identified a tire model. The tire model narrows vehicle class. Vehicle class, combined with surveillance footage, electronic records, and witness accounts, can produce a specific vehicle. A specific vehicle can produce the people who took Nancy. That entire chain of inference starts with what was, or wasn't, preserved on the decomposed granite surface of the circle driveway. In the first hours of this investigation, before the scene was accessed, disturbed, and accessed again, a black glove was recovered approximately 2 miles from Nancy's home. The FBI confirmed it appeared to visually match the type worn by the suspect in doorbell camera footage. It contained DNA from an unknown male. Not Nancy, not anyone close to her. That profile has been entered into CODIS. If this person has ever been arrested for a qualifying offense, convicted of a felony, or registered as a sex offender in any U.S. state, his DNA is in the database. CODIS searches continuously. If there's no hit, genetic genealogy takes over, the same methodology that identified the Golden State Killer in 2018 after 4 decades. A distant relative's publicly uploaded DNA, a family tree, a narrowing field of suspects. That case broke in 4 months once genealogy entered the picture. Both tracks are running simultaneously on Nancy's case right now. The FBI's Cellular Analysis Survey team is also almost certainly processing cell tower data from the hours surrounding February 1st. Every device active near Nancy's property that night was logged. Movement patterns exist. The investigation is further along below the surface than anything the public has been told. What we don't know, we do not know whether tire impression work was conducted on the circle driveway. We do not know whether impressions were recovered or whether the surface was disturbed first. We do not know what the FBI's forensic processing produced. What we do know is that Maureen O'Connell, a named, credentialed former FBI Evidence Response Team agent, analyzed publicly available footage, identified the circle driveway as the most likely vehicle staging location, described the forensic challenges that surface presents, and raised on the record the concern that a potentially critical piece of physical evidence may be unrecoverable. That is not speculation. That is a qualified practitioner, on record, by name, raising a specific substantiated concern about a real and ongoing case. If you've made it this far, you already know this channel is different. No filler, no recycled headlines, just deep forensic analysis on cases that matter. Subscribe now and hit the bell so you never miss an upload. And before you go, what do you think investigators should have prioritized on day one at that property? Drop your answer in the comments. The best responses always come from this community, and I read every single one. If you have information about the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie, contact the Pima County Sheriff's Department or the FBI.